definitely at the heart of everything that we do. And it's something that has been kind of incorporated more and more into our core programme, which is just something that's been the ethos of LCO for the past 10 years, which is as long as Music Junction has been happening for. So it's to explain a little bit further about the actual programme. It's a 3-tiered programme, which consists of our LCO musicians, mentors who are pupils usually from independent or grammar schools that can already play their instruments and are learning the skill set to pass on what they already know, accompanied by our students at Queen Mary's, and the mentees who have never picked up an instrument before, never experienced classical music, or have not had the kind of the background, the socioeconomic background, in order to kind of access this world of classical music, which is something completely kind of different for them. So I currently manage the Music Junction programme, and Emmy is here with me as a particularly special feature to this, as she not only managed it prior to me, but was also a participant. I don't know how long ago that was, Emmy, maybe you don't want to say.
No, I'm more than happy to say. So I was a participant on the very first round of the project 10 years ago, which started in 2010. And I've had a very interesting journey, as Hattie mentioned, because I was a participant in the first round. And then for the years after that project, the project had such an impact on me and my mental well-being and kind of an all-encompassing positive impact, that I then stayed with the project as an ambassador for it. And then a couple of years ago, before Hattie, I ran the project. So I've kind of got the whole arc of the different roles that you can have within the project. So I think that gives me quite an interesting perspective to kind of evaluate it, I guess, from all of the different benefits it can have.
Yeah, I think interesting, we were talking earlier in the week about well-being, and you mentioned that, 10 years ago, mental well-being wasn't kind of this huge, term and kind of just ethos that it is now. And so you're kind of having to look back and reflect on what that actually meant, although it would have obviously been having a positive impact, but you wouldn't have had to term it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very interesting looking back in hindsight, because exactly as Hattie said, when we did the project and we're doing the kind of, participant evaluation afterwards, we could all spout out that, it had huge impacts on our self-esteem, huge impacts on our confidence, the connectivity it brought with both within our school, the relationships we developed within our school, with the other schools, with the participants, with the London Chamber Orchestra. All of these had such a positive impact. But it's only actually now in hindsight, with this shift to mental health and mental well-being and this new terminology we've all had to learn during the last 10 years, that actually I can really look back and say, yes, not only did it have these huge impacts on all of the things I've just mentioned, but actually it had a huge impact on our mental well-being. And even just as a really kind of broad example, the positivity that we all exhumed after taking part of this experience in the school, the fact that we could look back on this experience as something really huge that we'd done with this incredible orchestra, the experience that we'd had, and then also the impact that we felt we'd had on the children that we were mentoring, because I was a mentor, so I had mentees that I looked after. So it was very interesting then coming back into working for LCO kind of about 8 years after that, and all across our evaluation is now mental health, mental well-being. And it's actually really, really cool. I found it very, very inspiring, actually, that we now have a project that fits into these categories and has this positive impact on mental well-being.
Yeah, it's almost like it was designed before its time in a lot of ways, I think.
Absolutely.
And it's definitely something that we're not having to kind of pigeonhole to shape into what funders want in terms of, the mental well-being side of things. It just kind of naturally fits in so many ways.
Yeah.
Really
Can I ask a question? Emily and Hattie, how much does the well-being agenda, if you like, affect your choice of repertory, of the music you play? Have you changed things because you've got to think about that, or are you just doing the same sort of work, the same sort of training, performing the same sort of music?
Oh, massively. So we commission a new piece every year that is played by all the mentees, mentors, and musicians. And we ask the composers to go into every single workshop so that all of the mentees and the mentors have a connection to the music which is actually being composed. And I think that is such an important feature. And they also contribute to the composition, which I think just gives the pupils an insight into a language of music that they didn't know that they could, they didn't know they had access to this, which is just such an empowering feeling for them to be able to contribute artistically in a way that they didn't realize possible. So the growing of that, the music with the participants and the composers just ends in this kind of big finale of feeling like they have ownership over not only their own part, but of the whole piece as a whole, which I think has kind of a beautiful symmetry to it.
Emily, because you were playing in the orchestra before as a young person and now back as a mentee. How much does this word orchestra important? I mean, I know it's a chamber orchestra, but the question of learning a part that is part of a whole, how much does this is involved in the philosophy of Music Junction?
It's huge, and it's huge on so many different levels. Of course, first there's the orchestra as a kind of academic term. It's an orchestra, it's a group of musicians. And so the children learning about an orchestra, how people slot together and how you can work together as a team, that is something that kind of runs through all of our workshops, all of the activities we do, how lots of different elements can collectively contribute to something that is way bigger than what you could imagine happening, say, just in individual music lessons. And actually the theme of togetherness, which is something that really comes from an orchestra, is something that runs through the whole project. So the fact that we don't just work with one school, we bring lots of different schools together. In a lot of the reports we've written over the years, we use that as an analogy of an orchestra. You're not just bringing together lots of individual players, you're also bringing together different groups of people who might not have met before. In the same way, in an orchestra, you have the string section and the woodwind section, and they're completely different. You're having mentors and mentees, and even within each of those pockets of schools, there's such differences between them. And it's that collective coming together that is really the absolute heart of Music Junction.
But I think interestingly, one thing that adds to it is the fact that they're coming together in each other's spaces. So each workshop will go around to each of the different participant schools, which I think, Emmy, you've had more experience. I've come onto this project in COVID times. So, but I think you've had more experience of going into each other's spaces and the impact that makes as well upon the...
Yeah, absolutely. The physical going into the different schools has such an important impact on all of the participants. For the mentees, they're often from schools that don't have the best facilities. They've got no space, they've got no music resources whatsoever. And we take them from their own environment and we shove them straight into schools that they might not have even dreamed that exist, and concert venues that they perhaps just did not think they had access to because they, weren't part of that community. And that really opens their eyes to this whole new world that's available and that they can enter, it's not restrictive. And actually what's very interesting, a lot of people say to us often, what's the benefit to the mentors? These mentors who are often from brilliant schools with lots of facilities, what's the point of taking them into these schools where, they've got next to nothing? And actually that is just as important because it opens their eyes to this other world that doesn't exist. And it really opens their eyes to, oh, okay, there are these differences. I'm very fortunate. Therefore, what can I give back to the community in those ways? So the physical interaction of everyone in different spaces makes it a really inclusive project.
I'm going to be handing over to María Claudia from Bogota. Now, when I first went to visit María Claudia's orchestra, one of her many orchestras, the Batuta, they played Handel for me. The orchestra suddenly started playing Handel as it was. So what would you be playing for Maria Claudia if she walked into her room? Have you got any Colombian music in your repertory?
I wish. I think it would be excellent. Yeah, I'll talk to Christopher Warren Green about it.
One of the things that'll come out of this conversation, perhaps Maria Claudia will be able to suggest some great Colombian music for London Chamber. So thank you both so much.
Thank you.
I have to confess that I do know Maria Claudia a bit because we've worked together, and Maria Claudia has an incredible connection to Queen Mary, where Maria Claudia has joined a 5-year research project that's been run by the Unit for Social and Community Psychiatry at Queen Mary to look at how the arts, in the case of Batuta, music, makes a difference in the lives of young people in terms of their mental health and well-being. So we're just at the start of that journey. We've been going for about a year now. So I'm delighted. One of the things we wanted, Maria Claudia, was that not to just do that research project, but you could join us for other conversations. So it's a great privilege. I just say that it was interesting hearing in the London Chamber Orchestra them talking about governments, because you are very much a government organization. This is a forward-thinking government that invests very strongly in music and the arts in the education of young people. So Maria Claudia, thank you. But I know that Maria Claudia wants to show a video before she says hello. So we're going, Dean, can you show us the video from Batuta Fundación from Bogotá, Colombia? How are we doing, Dean? Are we going to manage to show that? Yes, thank you.
No, this is not the video.
Aha, but it gives us a good idea of the young people, doesn't it? So, Dean, we've got a different video. Can we find the other one? I think that's the one for the end, isn't it, Maria Claudia? Yes.
It's for the end, yes.
Yeah. So, Dean, we have a different video for the start, which is very much an introduction to the company. Maria Claudia, Batuta's been going, just while we're waiting for Dean to put up, Batuta's been going for 30 years, is it?
Yes, we are celebrating this year our 30th anniversary, and yeah, this is an organization, as we can see later in the slides, that was created by initiative of the national government. So, as you were saying, it's very interesting to understand that there is a correlation between what we do and public policies that are created with the idea of an integral development, and music has a place in these public policies. So that's what I would like to share with you this afternoon, and to tell you in detail how music can be used as a transformative tool, and also as a way to create opportunities of integral development in very deprived zones of our country.
Fantastic. I've just got a message from Dean with the wonders of Zoom. Dean is ready to show the video. So over to Dean and the video of Batuta. Thank you.
Ángel.
Mi nombre completo es Ángel Isaac Angulo Montealegre.
Una raza extranjera cuya boca dice falsedades.
Yo vivo en Puerto Asís, Putumayo. A mí me despiertan a las 5 de la mañana para que me bañe, me vista, vayamos a la cafetería donde mi mamá vende, le ayude a hacer algunos mandados. El día de hoy estaba lloviendo mucho, no había energía, el agua estaba fría. Entonces pues prendimos velas para poder mirar. Nos alistamos las cosas y vinimos a la cafetería. Cuando uno se levanta, pues uno tiene que irse rápido a Sinfónica porque uno por veces llega tarde por eso de estar madrugando. Yo toco el violín en el proceso sinfónico de Batuta en el jardín. Mi sueño con el centro musical es que nos digan que necesitan conciertos en varios países, irnos allá a gozar unos días, tocar el ensayo, pasear por la ciudad o país.
Nuestros niños pues se encuentran en Batuta como ese espacio en el que ellos pueden olvidar, dejar a un lado pues esa violencia que tanto los azotó y mirar otro panorama distinto pues al de las balas que sonaban antes y cambiarlas por sonidos que disparan sus instrumentos. Algo así es lo que se puede apreciar ahora en la realidad de ellos.
Nosotros fuimos desplazados en el 2002, que me tocó salir de mi misma casa, de mi mismo territorio, me tocó irme a Tumaco a refugiarme por allá. Él dice que va a ser músico, llega contento y dice, mami, yo voy a ser como mi profesor de música, yo voy a enseñar música. Mi hijo ha crecido y gracias a eso él ha tomado disciplina. Él tiene su tiempo, ya él dice, llegó del colegio y ya dice, me toca ir a Sinfónica, tengo que hacer las tareas, tengo tiempo para jugar. Eso le ha ayudado a él para su disciplina.
Yeah, so I really think, Paul, that this short video represents very well the impact of Batuta in Colombia. And I wanted to share it with you because it also gives you an idea of what we mean when we say that we work in very deprived zones of our country. Just to let you know, Angel Isaac, the kid of this video, is now studying in a professional level in a very important conservatory in Colombia. So it also shows like the relationship between music training from a social perspective in terms of social mobility in the society. No, so yes.
That's fantastic, Maria Claudia. Are you going to show us some slides of your work? So perhaps we'll have a look at the slides now, and you can tell us more about the organization. So, Dean, can we have the slides? But the video really does say everything, I must admit, Maria Claudia.
Thank you. So can we move forward, please?
So next slide, Dean.
Okay, so I was telling you that we were created in 1991, 30 years ago, and the creation of Batuta was an initiative of the government. Of course, in joint ventures with the private sector, which is very important because we are not a public organization. We do work with international cooperation and with the private sector. Of course, developing these projects with the idea of creating social impact in the country. So it was conceived and was based, of course, in El Sistema from Venezuela, but it was created to materialize the national system of children and young adult orchestras in the country. But the objective is not only to bring music to people, but also to increase this enjoyment and contact with music as a cultural right, and also to create these opportunities for Colombian kids to exercise the cultures and the dignification of their lives. Right now we have 51 orchestras and 700 ensembles of orff instruments and more than 370 choirs all over the country. So we are a very big organization. We work in different parts of the country, in the rainforest, in the coasts, in the Atlantic and the Pacific coast, and of course in the mountains, because we, as you know, are a part of the Andes system in the mountains of South America. The next, please. So last year we had, despite the COVID and the pandemic and everything what happened in the world, we had 30,000 beneficiaries in 183 musical centers that are in more than nearly 100 municipalities of the country. The next, please. And as you can conclude, our mission is to contributing to improve the quality of life of Colombians, children, teenagers, and young adults through musical education of excellence that is centered on collective practice. As you were saying, also the Chamber Orchestra was saying about the project. It is very important that this practice is collective and that is part of the excellent results that we have, not only in musical terms, but mainly in things that are associated with the incorporation of values in the lives of kids and youngsters in our project. Next, please. Of course, we have a principle. We really believe in the transformative power of music and the stimulus that collective musical education brings to the individuals and the societies. And this is something that is not only like words that we say about ourselves, but it's also something that we live in the daily life of the musical centers and in the lives of the kids. Next. Yeah. So that's why we say that our field of action is a point of intersection between education, culture, and social development. And what we do is to contribute to the integral education of children and teenagers with a special focus on those that are vulnerable and that live in very, very poor neighborhoods or municipalities of the country. Of course, we also work towards the implementation of public policies that try to democratize the enjoyment, learning, and practice of music. Also, we work for the safeguard of the rights of children, teenagers, and young adults, and we certainly create spaces for the cohesion of the social fabric of our towns. Just to say very quickly, we work with the pedagogical approach that is called school orchestra. The next, please. And this is a model that is implemented in an environment of excellence and is supported by well-defined and focused processes that promote values such as respect, honesty, equity, harmony, and solidarity, among others, in terms of the things that we realize that kids gain with the practice of music in these musical centers. We have a program for pregnant and lacting mothers. The next, please. We also work with kids from 2 years to 18, of course, but this program, Batu Bebés, is a musical stimulation program, and it's a very nice program that we have all over the country. The next one. Music transition is for kids that are 4 to 6 years, and is a complementary program of the first stage of the program of music transition. The next one, please. And then the initiation ensembles and choirs, that is our biggest program in the country. It is a program oriented towards kids that are aged 6 to 16. And we work with Orff instruments and with Colombian percussion instruments, with instruments that are set in a way in which all the kids participate in the learning process and also in the process of producing concerts and participating actively in choirs. And of course, this program allows us also to have, as other examples in the world of these kind of projects, a very active presence in the cultural life of our country. The next one. And the symphony training program that of course is oriented towards children, teenagers and young adults. And it's the program for the creation of symphony orchestras as like a space where we can provide these kids of very well established forms of teaching music and of giving them the opportunity, if they want to become professional musicians. So that's what we do. The next, please. We also work in a program with kids that have different kinds of disabilities, and this is a very important program because I can say in Colombia it's like the most important approach from arts towards the attention of this kind of population. The next. And well, we have also some cross-cutting lines or transversal projects. The next. For example, Batuta Talents, that is a program for those kids who want to become professional musicians, so they can find in the program academic training, like more hours of training in their specific instrument, and also if they require financial assistance, we help them to find the resources so they can not only assume the exams that they have to make when they go to the universities or the conservatories here in Colombia, but also to access to the professional education in financial terms. We have also, the next please, another line that is Batuta Connection, that is a strategy that allows us to connect with other projects in Colombia and in the world that work with music from a social perspective. And there is also a space where we can work with professional volunteers and peers. So it's like a program that, for example, allows us to bring people from abroad, professional musicians or musicians that are at a very high level of their careers, and they want to come to Colombia and visit our music centers and stay for some months in order to work with the teachers and with the kids. And it also allows us to bring some kids to other musical programs of the world. So maybe we can work all together, the organizations that are present now in this conversation. We also have a line in terms of understanding that kids must be like exposed to other cultural experiences. So this Broadening Cultural Horizons is a program that was created to bring the kids that belong to a musical center to other cultural activities. So we have the museums, the heritage, the possibility of traveling with the kids, not only to Colombian cities, but also to other parts of the world. And is also a space where we can create programs like, for example, the representative orchestras that bring together kids from different cities of Colombia to Bogota or to other cities in order to have musical residencies and very important concerts in the main theaters and spaces for the performing arts in the country.
Maria Claudia, that feels like a great moment to take a bit of a pause. particularly because you've just made that incredible invitation to say that we could come and join you when the world opens up again. And I'm very much hoping that you can be with us at Queen Mary, because I know that London and the UK is somewhere you've visited a lot in the past. Paul Edlin, who's Director of Music at Queen Mary at the university, very much brought us all together. Paul, what are your observations on what you've been, reflections on what you've been hearing so far? Oh, you're on mute. Oh, that's it.
I've done it. Yes. Now, there are a range of issues here because, well, let me first of all cite the well-being of the nation's economy. The manufacturing sector generates £130 billion for the United Kingdom's economy. The financial services and agri-food are 120 billion each. The creative industries are 100 billion. The automotive industry is 79 billion, and the hospitality sector is a mere 59 billion. Fishing is less than 1 billion. So the creative industries are really a vital, important part of our nation's prosperity. Now, if you take away access to arts learning and access to engagement in the arts, you're going to do two things. One is you're going to get less taxable income to the Chancellor of the Exchequer's revenue. So that's not going to be bad for the well-being of the country. You're going to get more social and health costs, which is also going to be bad for the United Kingdom's economy. And what is going to happen? They're going to be depressed, they're going to be anxious, they're going to be frustrated, they're going to be unfulfilled. When a child can have access to their chosen pathway, there's going to be satisfaction, pride, happiness, and personal and financial prosperity. And our purses are filled and our souls are fed. You can ask any Queen Mary music student, all studying non-musical subjects, what music means to them. And they say it'll keep them sane, it gives them purpose. And we all now hear them using the word well-being. That word well-being is overused now, but it's not. We know that music has many transferable skills. There's documents galore on that. I have to tell you that unfortunately, data now is not considered as important, certainly if you're going to the nation's government and explaining things to the government, as it used to be. Music makes you more intelligent. Yes, it does, because we do know that engagement in the arts, and particularly in music, will give you extremely good manual dexterity. It will help you with all your other aspects of learning. It promotes self-esteem, organizational skills, makes you more astute, helps your communication skills. I like to think my communication skills are better, probably because of my musicianship. So all these are benefits. So is there a correlation between the decrease in arts engagement and arts learning that has happened over the past few years and the increase in mental health problems? Now, we're not talking about mental health such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. We're talking about depression and anxiety. And we now have more staff working in schools to support mental health and less to teach the arts. I had the privilege of working with the London Chamber Orchestra on their Music Junction programme as their composer in residence. So I saw it for probably 3 years, actually, at first hand. I never forget going in to seeing some young carers. It stays with me. And those young carers, this was the most important part, not of their week, of their life. For them, their engagement in Music Junction changed their life. I remember going back on the train with one of the boys who was playing in the orchestra and his father. And the father said, "Excuse me, are you the composer?" And I said, "Yes." And I said, "How did your son get on?" He said, "This is the most important thing in his entire school, probably his entire personal life." So now what we've got to do is find ways to make sure that what they say and what they achieve is actually properly recognized. And that is going to require a real coming together of both arts organizations and academics, so that they really can be a positive way to really develop a future pathway. Because otherwise, Great Britain is going to watch Colombia rise, and Colombia will be watching Great Britain decrease. And that's a fact.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Well, we've certainly got arts organisations and academics here on the panel, and I know I'm looking at some of the people in the audience who are in the webinar as well. So please put your questions and comments and reflections on the chat. But in the meantime, I'm going to pass back to Maria Claudia, because I know that evaluation is at the heart of your enterprise, and you've been thinking about different ways of doing that over the years. So can you share some of that with us in terms of how you were able to tell the stories of what you do through data, through evidence?
Yeah, of course. So can we go back to the slides, or?
Would you like to show it on the slide? Yeah. Great, so, well done.
We can skip the social report, but I can tell you that what we do is that we have a system in order to identify each of our kids or the young people that are part of the different projects. So we know exactly like their names, their familiar situation, their educational situation, everything about them. And that's the way in which we can characterize the population that is a part of the programs of Batuta. So this is very important because it's part of like the main basic structure in informational terms in order to develop different researches and investigations in Batuta. We do use forms, but I have to say that we have a psychosocial line that is very important in the Batuta programs, because as you know, most of the kids that are participants of the programs are also victims of the war in Colombia. We had the largest internal conflict of this hemisphere for 50 years. So we have a lot of people that are victims of the war, and most of the programs or the main programs of Batuta are oriented towards the attendance of the population that are victims of the war. So our psychosocial line of work is very important for the development of the work of the music teachers. That's very important to say. And these forms that we use in the different approaches to investigation are a part of the psychosocial component of the work we do here in Colombia. So it's not the kid filling the form, no, or throwing it away or doing what they want with the piece of paper, but it's like a very controlled approach to the information process that we need to follow in order to have a certain data that is very valuable for us. So can we move forward, please? More, so we can have here like basic data, but I want to share this part. We did a psychosocial impact investigation in 2008, and some of the things that we found are exactly the things that you were saying about your own programs and your own experience in London. What the kids say of the program is that this program gives them values for coexistence, which is something that is very important in our own social conditions. Also, that there is a perception of happiness when they play music. They perceive that they can be happier if they practice music, no? So this is very important also in terms of well-being, because we can define, as all of you know, well-being in different ways, or we can have conceptual approaches to the idea of well-being that are very different one from another. But of course, happiness is related with this idea of well-being, and this is something that the kids express all the time. Why is it that you come to the musical centers of Batuta? Because I feel happy, because I love to play the violin and I feel happy. And for persons that are displaced people, or that are people affected in other ways by a war, this feeling of happiness is very important. Also because they expand the networks. And of course, in terms of displacement and the reaccommodation of these kids to the new places where they live, this idea of social expansion in the networks is very important. The next one, please. For the parents, so they say everything is important. That's why the numbers are like the same in the different information issues that we were trying to understand. But what they say is that the use of free time that we call here like lonely time or time of loneliness, because many of our kids have a lot of hours in solitude, no, with no one around, and of course in very dangerous contexts in terms of, for example, the criminal groups want to take them to be part of the armed groups that we still have in Colombia. So the risks are not only drugs or not using in a good way the free time that they have, but are risks related with violence in a very direct way. So for parents, the use of free time is very important. Also, the sense of responsibility in terms of one thing that happened with the kids is that they organize the time. That is something that we have been detecting. I'm sure you have also noticed that in your programs. So they can organize the time in a better way in terms of doing their homework or their schoolwork, and also practicing the instrument. No, there is like a relation between the way in which you use your time and the organization of the duties that you have to follow. And of course, parents also value very much this idea of the networks and the expansion of the social networks that they have. The next one, please. In terms of what Paul was saying with respect to the knowledge and the cognitive approach, we did an investigation that was in order to understand if the kids that were taking part of the Batuta musical centers had better results in the state exams. You know that when they finish their cycles in education, they have to take a state exam. So we did a comparison between the ones who were practicing music and the ones that were not practicing music. And we had these results. So kids that are practicing music are much better in maths, in language, in physics, and in social sciences. This was a very interesting way of understanding other approach to the effects of musical practice and music in the lives of kids and youngsters. The next, please. And we also did a very important research with the National Department of Planification. So this was very scientific way of doing the investigation. And the evaluation was the evaluation of musical training processes and the impact on the academic performance of pre-orchestral program of Batuta. But mainly it was related with the personal dimension and interpersonal dimension. So we divided it into two, like in the personal dimension, what are the changes that are produced by music, and the interpersonal dimension, what are the changes produced by practice of music. In terms of leadership, we found that there is a huge difference between the ones who practice music and those who do not have access to music. They are good leaders, they test skills, they plan, they practice values, they are open to learning new things. And those are factors that are very important in terms of what we understand as an integral development of the country, no? The next, please. In terms of respect, We found that they have cooperative relations, they recognize the individual contributions in collective achievements, and they respect others and the decisions that other kids make. The next.
Maria, I think if that's okay, we'll finish this part of the presentation now, if that's okay.
Yes, of course.
Because I think you've just given us an incredible view of the different instruments you've used to be doing the evaluation. I'd like to ask and there's a couple of questions that come up that have come here. I'd like to ask one question just of all the panel of how you do incredible things. You've been doing incredible things for many years. How have you managed to carry on supporting that health and well-being as organizations during the COVID-19? So I'd like to ask LCO how you've managed to still carry on caring for young people through COVID-19, and then to ask the same of Maria. So perhaps Hattie.
Yeah, it's I guess it's been going on for over a year now that we've been having to deal with it, which is crazy. But it's been a lot more work we've been running the program. We'll be running it online in a collective music making experience, which, considering that I always say if you have to get just the family round to sing happy birthday on Zoom, how hard it is to get hundreds of pupils all playing together at once. But we started online workshops with Emmy back in the summer term, and the feedback that we've had has just been absolutely incredible. It's especially when there's so much uncertainty in these children's lives have been turned upside down, and they have so little extra to do, that to give them, was it the online workshops with Beth, was it the body percussion and stuff, which had really resonated as well with particularly with the special needs pupils that we work with.
Brilliant. Just to give, because I know we haven't got much time, just to Maria Claudia, how have you managed to carry on? I know you have. How have you managed to carry on supporting young people's mental health well-being? And a really interesting question from Aoife herself, that everyone's been turning to the arts and particularly to music, but how Colombian musicians also managed to, because there's been a desperate state for musicians in so many countries. So if you could just two things.
A very hard situation. So in Batuta, what we did, just to say it very quickly, we created a program of virtual attention to the kids in order to not only to keep music as a part of the daily life of these kids in the confinement and the effects of the horrible emotional effects of the pandemic. We also created a remote program, we call it like that, but it's the use of radio. It's like using tools of the 50s in the last century, the radio and the correspondence, because we have a lot of kids that don't have internet and they don't have cell phones. So we decided to create like a strategy that is for the ones who have a computer or a cell phone, virtual classes and virtual program with a lot of commitment. We have more than 1,600 musicians working for Batuta in Colombia, and they are teachers, artists that teach music to the kids. And for the ones who are very far apart in the rural areas, in the forest and everything, and they don't have internet, so we created this approach, giving them books, like booklets with the instructions, and also a USB, you say that, a USB with the musical content, and a small reader of this USB, so they can listen to the instructions and the music and the choirs, etc. And also the radio with the national radio station, and with the help also of the army, I have to say, because the army has a huge net of radio stations in Colombia, in places where, guess what? They have presence and Batuta has presence. So it's something, it's the places of the war, I mean. So it was very, very, very important for them, and we did a lot of concerts. The kids were calling these the little square concerts. They said they were very happy to participate in these concerts, and they were working really hard in order to be part of the national concerts that we organized.
Maria, fantastic. I mean, it just is an inspiring vision and just reminds us what can be done if a government makes the decision that music should be at the heart of everything, of health, education, social welfare, etc. I'm very aware we're coming to the end of our this conversation, but I just do not believe this is the end of a conversation. I really do believe this is the start of something. I'm really hoping, Paul, I'm sure you hope the same, that there will be further, and Maria, there will be further ways in which we can build connections between QMUL and Batuta and LCO, and when which we can think about connections between London Chamber Orchestra and Batuta. And Maria, I think you started to sketch that out. So thank you so much for that. Aoife, I know you're hiding behind the Zoom screen. So I'd just like to bring you in because it's the end of the conversations for this week. I hope this has been a conversation you wanted to hear and participate in.
Absolutely, Paul. I can't think of a better way to end. It's such an amazing reminder of the value and power of art, and the ways in which so many different disciplines and approaches in the academy can kind of contribute to that value. So enormous thanks to all of you and to the two Pauls for making this event happen. It's also a huge privilege to bring voices from Brazil and Colombia and London together. And one of the, we all wrestle with the difficulties of the digital, but actually one of the greatly democratic qualities of it is that we can meet in virtual rooms together. So thank you so much for this really inspiring conversation. I just wanted to finish the week. This is our 17th event since last Friday. Those events have brought together 27 different academic disciplines, together with a whole range of art practices and cultural forms in conversation. And we felt that this was a moment in the world's history where conversation mattered more than ever. I think that value and the quality of that has really shown itself. It does take work to make conversations happen. And of course, the invisible hands that none of you as audience members have witnessed tonight have included the astonishing web team at Natives and also our Students' Union who've been managing these events for us. I did say they were a little like the hand of God. They have amazing power as to who appears on your screens, and they've dealt with our mild chaos in organizing these events with great grace. So I just wanted to say huge thanks to them. Also to Susan Ellicott, who produced the video to promote this event, has come to every single one. So I know she's watching right now. Thank you so much, Susan. This is the last week of semester at Queen Mary, and I know that Queen Mary staff are on their knees, sometimes actually literally. People are exhausted, and asking people to give up time. I know all of you were probably exhausted too. It's been a hard year. So asking people to give up their time, it's a Friday night in London, and some of you are here with us. The audience are watching, and actually legally at the moment, they could be in the pub in London, even though it's very cold and they'd have to sit outside. So the fact that you've given your time to be here, to engage in conversation with such richness is really to be thanked, and I really want to acknowledge it. Again, there's been amazing administrative support for this work. Again, it takes a lot of work to make these conversations happen. I did thank them last Friday. I want to thank them again. Anna Bonham, Alicia George, and Molly McPhee, who've all made this possible. I just wanted to finish to say that this has been a particularly hard year for artists, as we've heard. And they make our lives better. I mean, as I said in that comment, we turned to music, we turned to literature, we turned to Netflix to find our way through an astonishingly difficult year. The people who've done that work for us, who've made that work for us, are really struggling. They're finding it hard to pay the bills, to eat. And they do brilliant things, not only for the world in general, but also for the world of Queen Mary. I think what's really striking in the past week is how much they touch and engage with and enrich work going on across 27 disciplines in science, in medicine, and in the humanities. So I wanted to end just with an enormous thanks to people working in the arts, people working in the cultural sector. We really do value and appreciate what you do, and I want to kind of leave our conversations on that note. So Paul, I know you want to play us out. I'm going to stop now and hand over back to you. Thank you.
So much, Aoife. That's so beautiful. And I hope Maria Claudia's picked up some of that wonderful music in Aoife's voice, not just in what she says, but the beautiful way she says it. And you just really captured that for us, Aoife. Thank you. But we are going to finish with some music, courtesy of Batuta. We're going to pour Dean. We're going to test his technical skills just one more time, Dean. Sorry about this. Do you want to say something about this, Maria Claudia, or does it speak for itself?
No, this is a choir from the south part of Colombia, the frontier with Venezuela. They have música llanera. I don't know if you have ever heard about this term, but it's a very typical and traditional music of the south frontier with Venezuela. And I love the video because the kids were so nice, putting themselves like in their best dresses and everything in order to participate in the little square concerts.
Thank you.
The song talks about the idea of buying a beautiful house for someone that you love.
Perfect way to end our event. Thank you so much. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you for everyone with being with us. Bye-bye. Ciao. Ciao, Maria Claudia.
Ciao, Paul. Thank you very much to all of you.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
Yes, everyone. Paul, thank you.